So, the spoilers are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 401, and let's just say that this chapter almost made me cry because potentially a character may be dying in this chapter, and you'll get to see who that is right now. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to cover the spoilers for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 401. And yes, the spoilers are out. This chapter is going to be hyped for many a reason. And if the title of this chapter doesn't give it away, we get to see why this chapter is so heavily focused on a particular character. So, let's just dive right into the spoilers and talk about what's going to potentially be in this chapter. For starters, the title of this chapter is Chapter 401, The Lunatic, and this is most likely referring to Stain with what we get later on in this chapter, but yeah, that's most likely where the chapter is coming from. And the chapter begins with a flashback of Stain flying to All Might and All For One's fight with his glider. He deduced that what was going on from the conversation between All Might, Ingenium, and the quote Scar Kid, the closer he got, the more debris and trails of blood he saw. He wasn't sure if the blood was All Might's or All For One's, so he decided to smell it. And since he knows All Might's smell from Kamino, he confirmed that it wasn't his. Cut back to the present, and Stain wonders if All Might has understood the meaning of his own existence. Stain said all of that in Kamino because he wanted All Might to value his own life and continue to fight death. And All Might says that he got it. The two go for an attack, and Stain does his own version of I am here. But it's useless. All For One uses forced quirk activation and phlebotomy. All Might's I am here is Watashi ga kita, and Stain's is Ore ga kita. And now we're getting into something a little bit more interesting, and this is something that I want to discuss a little bit more in my actual review proper, but from what we're getting with this part of the text spoilers, we're getting a better understanding of what Horikoshi has been planning for All Might as a character when it comes to his wanting to live, as well as the interactions that he had with Stain, as well as what Stain meant by his words and what All Might is going to be doing and how he's going to be, in a way, enacting those words and phrases and the meanings that Horikoshi has been sprinkling in throughout the entire series. So I'm going to wait a little bit more for the more proper translations on whether or not what Stain is saying in here is accurate, but most likely what is being said from what we see with the spoilers is that All Might is doing what All For One is not wanting to do, but what Stain wanted All Might to do, to recognize that his life has meaning and that he could still continue fighting potentially. But from that part of the text spoilers, we continue on with a explanation of how this combo of quirks in reference to forced quirk activation and phlebotomy causes All For One's blood to leave his body and splash around. All For One says that he knew Stain would try to do something against him since he was the only one to leave Tartarus on his own. He came up with a plan. Stain says that he just has to lick the blood again, but All For One also used antigen modification to change his blood's composition. Fleeing without leaving evidence is how he stayed in the shadows for all these years. After all, a mouth thing comes out of his back and bites Stain. Stain is bleeding, and All For One mocks him, saying that taking off his own blood and replacing it has made him, quote, cool down. All Might shouts Stain's name, but All For One throws him several blocks away and then flies off. Stain is knocked down in a game center, and All For One is going to steal his quirk. All Might is flying towards them, and All For One starts talking. He says that Stain was important to Tomura and the League's growth, but his role in the story ended there. Stain says that there's no time because they're all part of one big process. Even though he didn't finish high school, All Might taught him the meaning of being a hero. Win this and keep living. Stain raises his hands as if he's praying. On the next page, All For One punches him, and lots of blood comes gushing out. And from what we're getting with this implication of the text spoilers, it's very most likely than not that this chapter is going to show Stain being killed by All For One and potentially having his quirk stolen, as well as once again emphasizing the ideals of All Might living but still needing to fight. So this is going to be very, very interesting when the actual translations as well as the more proper images come out, because the action that we're seeing just from the spoilers is very intense and really just showing how potentially Stain is going to be defeated and killed by the amount of damage that we see is being sustained by his body at this moment, as well as more or less the symbolism when it comes to Stain and his involvement within the story and the confirmation that his part in the story ends here. But now we're actually approaching the end of the text spoilers. We have that All for One then turns around to attack All Might too, but Hercules comes to protect him. All Might was sure that the car had already been entirely destroyed, but there was still a few pieces left. It also tells All Might to live and gets destroyed by All for One's laser. The next page shows All Might lying on the ground as Nana tells him to get up. He also sees Night Eye and understands that they're just illusions. It's his body trying to encourage him. He already lost all his support items and his legs aren't moving. But I'm not dead yet. Come over here. All Might is covered in blood and crawling on the ground, but he's still smiling. The last page shows All for One watching the falling UA as the cop says that he has gotten close enough to Shigaraki, he can now use the goo teleport quirk. End of chapter. And like I said, once again, there's something of a motif that we've been seeing most likely going to be in this chapter when it comes to All Might needing to fight on and win, but also that he needs to live past this point. And that's going to be, if these translations are correct, kind of change my perspective a little bit of the story with what Horikoshi is trying to tell him, but not changing it by any significant margin, and really showing that there are two arguments to why people may not like this moment, but that those arguments can actually exist and coexist with one another. But all in all, from what we're seeing with the spoilers, this is going to be another heavy action-packed chapter with a very much gut punch if we are to believe that Stain is dead, as well as just getting a lot of emotional moments and potentially having All Might almost die in this moment and possibly being the changing factor that prevents All for One from heading towards Shigaraki's location due to the fact that he is still very much alive. But yeah, that's all that we really have for the spoilers for this chapter. And let me ask you this, what did you think of the spoilers? Did you like them? Did you dislike them? What was your favorite part? And do you think that Stain is actually dead? Leave your thoughts down below. And don't forget to hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I upload more videos just like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!